The problem has gotten massive. It is when we started the company, is a $21 billion distressed private student loan market. With inflation and student loans being variable interest rate, that market in the last 14 months has exploded to over $45 billion.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. I'm joined with Kim, and today a very important guest here is Lane Schoenberger. He's been on our program before. And let me give you the big picture of why we do this program. Is many times entrepreneurs can solve problems that the government cannot solve, or government causes the problems. An entrepreneur can solve the problem. For example, like Twitter, like when Elon Musk went in there and solved that problem, I thought that was pretty good. A lot of people hate him for it. I don't know why, but anyway. Entrepreneurs have a lot of power since they don't need a job. And I think that's one of the biggest things I notice about people is they're so afraid of losing their jobs, they don't do what they have to do. But again, let me repeat, entrepreneurs have the power to oftentimes solve problems the government cannot solve or the government solves. So today we're very happy to have Lane Schoenberger. His company is called Why Refi. And for full disclosure, we make no recommendations as to what you invest in. You have to do your own due diligence. And I'm personally doing my due diligence on Lane's company, Why Refi, because I'd like to invest with him. But you have to do your own due diligence on that. So, Kim, any comments before we start on the student loan problem?
No, I'm really anxious to talk with Lane because this has been something that I think is actually on the borderline of criminal, putting these people in jeopardy and in debt and really handcuffing them for years and years and years and years. So a lot of people could make a lot of money. So I'm really happy to hear more and learn more about what is happening and how we can be part of the solution, as the problem has been caused by a lot of government.
We're talking about the student loan crisis. It's $1.78 trillion. Student loan debt is now the number one asset for the U.S. government. It used to be taxpayer money.
That's just crazy.
But now they take student loans. They promise you a good high-paying job if you get this loan. And then there's no job. You can't pay off your loan. And if you were a professional investor, you would not sign up for a student loan. They're the most onerous, the most horrible loans possible. We have a $1.78 trillion problem carried on the shoulders of our students.
Yep.
So, Lane, welcome to the program. The second time I've interviewed you. And again, we make no recommendations or endorsements. You have to do your own due diligence. And I was up at his office doing my due diligence.
And I just want to jump in and just reiterate what you said, Robert. Student loan debt is the number one asset of the U.S. government. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Go ahead. I just with my mind.
More than taxes.
Crazy.
So Lane, we have inflation going at all-time highs. And it was Biden who cut off the Keystone Pipeline, because I went to school for oil. I worked for Standard Oil. And the moment Biden cut off the oil pipeline, inflation went through the roof. And then he starts the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to increase inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not Republican or Democrat. You have your free choice here. But I watch what a person does, not what they say. So Obama was the guy that caused the student loan debt to go up. And Biden was the guy who cut off the Keystone Pipeline. So inflation is now going through the roof. And it's killing mom and pop. It's killing them. So how did Obama get his hands on top of the student loan debt problem?
Well, he's I would tell you the instigator behind the problem. And I'm going to bring up something really quickly because you both mentioned something. Kim, you brought it up that the situation with these folks is criminal, and it is the number one asset of the government. People don't look at it as an asset. The reality is it's an asset. Okay. We get asked two big questions. What if they forgive student loan debt? And what if they take away the bankruptcy provisions? Well, first, and I'm going to answer your question, they're not going to take away the bankruptcy provisions because this government wants indentured servitude. Okay? They want people in debt. And that's by removing those bankruptcy protections, the debt is going to find itself in bankruptcy court and eventually go away. So they're not going to remove it. It's just, I don't see it happening, right? Then the other side of that is, you've got the government that continuously gets involved. And whenever time the government gets involved in these things, ultimately what happens is the problem explodes. Okay, now going to what you had said, Robert, about, and I don't even need to throw Obama under the bus. The reality is he's already been run over, the bus backed up, checked to make sure it was him, and then ran over him again on this one. What happened was in 2006, 2007, things were going really well, right? The economy was booming, businesses were successful, things were happening in a very positive way. And my partner, the CEO of this company, had a very large education finance company back then. Had 1,000 employees. They were funding $1 billion a year in education finance for young people to go to school, and they were doing it right. They developed products that worked. They gave discounts on interest rates. They really built something special. They had a federal lending license, so they were assisting the federal government in providing education money for these young people to go to school. And they also developed a private lending product, so that, whatever's not covered by the government, they could get their education covered elsewhere. And of course, this is back before the government got involved. So education costs were much lower than they are today. Okay. Much more affordable. And then what happened, there was a thing called a public-private partnership. Okay. And this was a government program in essence, where they worked with the public, okay, in the capitalist world, allowing business owners like my partner to have a business where they could assist, and they would actually receive some compensation from the government for that assistance. Well, under Obama, they kept peeling it back, and eventually they ended the public-private partnership. And at that point in time, every single company out there, okay, this was his attempt to bring all education finance lending back into the Department of Education, closed down every single company. Thousands of people lost their job overnight, gone. Okay, came in, doors locked kind of thing. And my partner, he held on for a couple of years because he had built and diversified. Long story short, that public-private partnership came to an end. And when it did, and the government became the lender, okay, this is 08, 9, 10, and beyond, what you then saw was education costs going up substantially. All of a sudden, the college inflation cost hit 10% a year, and that was before the inflation that we're experiencing right now. And it was this hockey stick effect of the cost of going to school. And it's because, the government opens the purse strings, and what are the schools going to do? They're going to raise their rates. And they've been consistently doing that every single year. Now you come in and you add in the current cost of inflation, it's unattainable. The students just cannot afford it. It's beyond their grasp, right? So now we're in this ugly situation where we've got the total student loan debt was about $685 billion when Obama pulled that trigger. Now we're about to hit $1.8 trillion. So this problem was created by the government getting involved and has not gotten any better. It's only gotten worse.
Yeah, and Obama put your partner out of business.
Put him out of business. Yep.
Yeah.
And he had 1,000 employees. They all went, they were done. They all lost their jobs.
And I find it amazing that, and I've heard this before, Lane, that as soon as those student loans came under government, that the universities, colleges raised their tuitions. Now they're even charging the same tuition, and they're not even in class. They're doing it by Zoom, and they're still charging these enormous tuition fees. It's just It's out of control.
Again, it's criminal. You are 100% right.
So the thing that this is a Rich Dad radio show. We make no recommendations on investments, but I went to Lane's company. It's called YREFI because he's offering extremely attractive interest rates for private investors like Kim and myself to invest with him because, thanks to the government, the most dangerous words are, "Hi, I'm here to help you. I'm from the government." You're in trouble. But what happens now is we can't get any returns on our cash. So Lane has a company. His company is called YREFI. They find students who are in trouble with student loans. And correct me if I'm wrong. And then you, through the magic of your banking expertise, you're able to get the loan paid off faster. At the same time, private investors like Kim and I come in, and you can offer us interest rates of 10.25%, which
Correct.
is shocking today. So anyway, that's why it's a very interesting program. And again, we make no recommendations here, but here's another situation where an entrepreneur is solving the problem caused by our government.
Yep.
So how does it work? How do you take, let's say a student has 30,000 in debt. What's the first step you guys do from there at YRefi?
So basically, in this case, I want to be very clear. We, YRefi, we will not do any business with the federal government. We're not interested in working with federal student loans. All we focus on here is private student loans that are in distress. Okay, now private student loans originated from private lenders, the banks, the lending institutions, Sallie Mae and Navient, even though you want to associate with them with federal money, they do have a private lending arm. And these are borrowers who went to school. They wanted to educate themselves. They wanted a better life. So they were looking for something, right? And at the end of the day, they came out and something happened and they could not service the debt. Now,
so Lane, let me ask a question on that point. So you cannot go bankrupt on a student loan, but these student loans are defaulting. What happens? Are you coming in at that point when they default? What does the government do? Go ahead.
There's a great question. There's two sides to that argument. On the federal government side, and right now all those loans are in forbearance and they're about to come out of forbearance. When the federal portfolio, when a borrower goes into default, they've got a bunch of different programs to help that borrower get back on track. Income-driven repayment plans. You've got a borrower with $100,000 in student loans making a $5 a month payment. They're calling them current. They're not current. They're in a plan that allows them to be called current. They're not current. On the private side, Kim, you ask a very, very important question here. On the private side, when a borrower goes into default, they've got a contract with the lending institution. So that contract is, well, you're late, so you got a late fee, and at 30, 60, 90 days, then you're slipping into default. Now you're going to go into a double-digit interest rate, okay, because it's prime plus X.
Wow.
And then now we got collection fees, we got attorney's fees. These private student loans, all of a sudden, they're hitting north of 20% interest rate, variable interest rate. In a lot of cases, they're hitting maximum usury in whatever state they live in. So, and their credit is getting just demolished. It's been torpedoed. So they've got no way out. The federal government, they give them all kinds of options and ways out, right? Private lenders, not so much. Now that's where YRefi came in, going back to what Robert had said from an entrepreneurial standpoint in the capitalism world of, okay, how do we fix this problem? Well, we came up with a product, and that's what we're going to talk about. Is I'm going to explain how we do what we do and how we are able to pay up to 10 1/4 to investors to participate in that. Right.
So it's a win-win-win. The investor makes money, but more importantly, the student with the student loan debt is happier. But oftentimes, you were telling me when I was at your offices that the family's in trouble. If a student is in trouble, the family's in trouble with the student loan debt. So we'll come back. We'll be talking more about that. Is how Lane's company YRefi. So if you know somebody with huge student loan debts, this is your program to listen to. But also, if you're an investor looking for a higher rate of return than 3%, which I think is pretty good today, and Lane's offering 10.25%. And again, we don't make recommendations. I'm doing my due diligence now. But this is how an entrepreneur will solve a major problem caused by criminals like the Biden crime family and the Obama crime family. And I mean, how in the world can these politicians, they're making $250,000 a year and they live in $100 million mansions? I mean, how did these guys do it? I mean, Lane, they must be better businessmen than us.
They're doing something right.
I just cannot believe. She was a college professor. Now she's a senator.
Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, I mean, how does
Elizabeth Warren?
How does she have $160 million portfolio, making $250,000 a year? I mean, they must be.
She's collecting cans. She's collecting cans. Yeah, no, she's collecting cans on the side.
Yeah. called the magic of politics. You know what I mean? You can take nothing and
That's
turn it
right.
into millions. Anyway, we'll come back. We're talking more about if you have a student who is in trouble with student loan debt, or you're an investor who wants to make a higher return on your money. Again, we don't make recommendations. We're doing our due diligence ourselves on this whole thing. But this is what entrepreneurs do, is they find a problem and they solve it. So we come back, we're talking more with Lane Schoenberger, and his company is called YREFI. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Kiyosaki, co-host of the Rich Dad Radio Show. And I want to thank today's sponsor, our friends at Gold Alliance. You know, we should all be concerned about high inflation, a looming recession, the very troubled banking system, and out-of-control spending in Washington. And the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, many of those who failed to prepare watched their savings, investments, and retirement funds plummet, while others with the foresight to own gold helped preserve their wealth and purchasing power. Now, we're facing several major crises at once, and we may soon face even more economic turmoil. So please don't wait. Consider gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican Governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Please visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585. Thank you.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Once again, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We make no recommendations on investments, so you got to do your own due diligence. But also, today we're talking about a very important subject. It's about how entrepreneurs can solve problems caused by our government. And this is one of the biggest problems in America today. It's called student loan debt. It's $1.78 trillion. It is the number one asset of the federal government. It is more money than taxes. And what America has done in our desperation to keep spending money is we've now put the burden of the economy and the government on our students. And our schools are not delivering, in my opinion, not that good an education. So today our guest is Lane Schoenberger. His company is called YREFI. It's how much damage it does to the student, but also how he can take that and offer a higher return on money than the banks can. That's what entrepreneurs do. It's a very important show for those who have either students who are in trouble or would like to make more money on your savings account. So, Kim, why don't you tell the story that Sarah passed around first?
So there was a story of it. It was all about student loan debt. There's a gentleman. He took out a student loan in 1988. So 1988, your tuition was a lot less than it is today. So 1988, today, 35 years later, he still owes $140,000 in student loan debt. He basically made no headway over 35 years and paying. And now with interest rates going up, now that monthly amount's going to really cripple him as a student loan debt has crippled so many students and so many people out there. But I just found that shocking. 35 years, still owes $140,000, and he has been religiously paying every single month. Now, if that's not criminal, I don't know.
That is.
And as a professional investor, I wouldn't touch a student loan. I wouldn't buy real estate with a student loan.
No.
But anyway,
no. Although I do know people who did get student loan debt and went out and bought property with it.
So, Lane, what you also hear the story of what happens to the families if a student gets in trouble, right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I'll give you some statistics on this was actually relating to our portfolio as well as to the industry. So about 70% of our borrowers have a co-borrower, right? Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, someone signed on the dotted line with that borrower. We have the same exact statistics in our portfolio. And what's ultimately happened is when that borrower defaults, right, their co-borrower is now responsible. Well, a lot of the times the co-borrower doesn't find out until it's too late, right? The borrower and the co-borrower, the relationships are getting damaged. If you go to our website, investwhyrefi.com, you can actually go down to the testimonials page, and you'll be able to hear testimonials from our borrowers. These are real borrowers. Okay, I had the pleasure of doing the interviews, and I can tell you some stories. And you've got Amanda, for example. Her grandmother signed on the loan with her, and she wound up in a bad situation. Couldn't make the payments on the loan, and you'll hear it in the story. She was done. And when I say done, she'll talk about it in the video. We edited it down. It was about an hour and a half long conversation between Amanda and myself. She was explaining that she was in a very dark place. And she's not the first, and she won't be the last, unfortunately, that talks about being in a dark place and what that means to her. And you'll hear at the end of the conversation, she mentions to us that she said, "Thank you for what you did. You probably saved my life." Again, we cut that way down to about 3-minute video. And I can tell you that is terrifying to hear people talking about, "Oh my gosh, I'm so in over my head. My grandmother, who basically raised me, is on the hook for this loan, and it's ruining our financial lives, our relationship, and it might just be easier if I walk away." Well, that's not a good solution. So we came up with a better solution, right? And so let me explain a little bit, if I may, about how we do what we do. Okay. Because there's a lot of people that receive phone calls from various student loan companies doing this, that, and the other thing, and we don't do any outbound phone campaigns. There's no robocalls. That is not why refi. Okay, borrowers come to us through a bunch of different sources. For example, Dave Ramsey, he endorses us from the standpoint of the borrowers, right? If there's a place where people are in debt, well, it's Dave Ramsey. They listen to him and they're trying to get out of debt. You've got the lenders, the servicers, the collection agencies, law firms. They will refer business to us, live transfer of the borrower from their call floor to our call floor, because they know they cannot help them, and we can. Okay, we do a lot of other advertising like Google and direct mail and so on. Point is, the borrower calls us, we explain our program, and again, about 70% have a co-borrower. So mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, somebody else that needs to sign on. Now, during that, we do pull their credit. Now, the reason we pull their credit is we want to know what their total debt load looks like, specifically speaking, their student loan debt load. Very important component to this. Okay. With that, we're able to calculate what their payment would be with YRefi if we were to fund a loan. Right. Now, the important part about that is these people are in distress. So we then set up an escrow account, and we require that borrower to start making that payment to us right now. Why? They have to prove to us that they have the willingness and the ability to pay us back. Kind of important. We require 2 months minimum of those payments before we'll even consider taking them to loan committee. We average about 6 months. Okay, we want to have a relationship with these people. Now, during that time, what we're doing is we have to go identify the loans, find them, and start negotiating. We start working with the existing lender, servicer, collection agency, law firm, start negotiating with them, and ultimately we will settle and pay off the debt at a deep discount. Okay, now, what does that discount look like? It's about 35-40 cents on the dollar is what we're paying it off at.
So, hold on a second.
Now,
so wait, when I went to your offices, which are in North Scottsdale, Arizona, that's your magic sauce, is that you're able to renegotiate the loan where the family is not able to do that. And so what
correct.
Lane does, so let's say it's $100,000, it gets it down to like $30,000. And then a person like Kim or myself step in and we will replace the loan with somebody else. But your magic is your ability to renegotiate this horrible loan. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, there's a couple of caveats, Robert, which are very important to the success of our borrowers. And what I mean by that is we then, once we negotiate that price and the borrower's agreed and everybody's agreed on what we're going to do, we refinance that loan to the borrower. However, we do not give them a discount on the face value of the loan. They still, in this example, they still owe $100,000. In fact, we have a 5% refinance fee. So they actually owe 105. Okay. Now we get asked all the time, well, why don't you give the borrower a discount? And the answer is we could, we will not. And here's why. If we did, the borrower would get hit with what's called cancellation of debt income tax. Okay. Now all of a sudden you've got a borrower, and these borrowers are not making poor money. They're making pretty good money, some of them. So you get into a situation where all of a sudden you owe, let's say we took 40% off of a $100,000 loan. They have a $40,000 ordinary income taxable gain in the year in which it's done. Well, the IRS steps in front of YRefi and the investors, so we don't want to do that. We do share the discount through a low fixed interest rate and a custom term. Okay, our average interest rate that we charge our borrowers is only 3.9 fixed. Average term is only 8.6 years. These are not long-term predatory loans. They're short-term, custom-tailored loans built around that borrower's ability to pay. Okay. Now, here's what's interesting, and this is why we can do what we do, because we don't have any institutional capital. 100% of our money is raised through a Regulation D offering filed with the Securities Exchange Commission. So we're taking investor money, and we deploy that to pay off these loans. And now, what's interesting is, going back to the borrowers for a second, our average borrower comes to us with a low 500, high 400 FICO score. Our average co-borrower, low 600, high 500 FICO score. Okay. If we were a traditional lender, we would underwrite on FICO. We do not. We don't care what their FICO is. We know it's bad, and we know why it's bad. In fact, when you look at the credit reports on these folks, which we do right in the loan committee, put them up on the big screen. Okay. We're looking at those credit reports. They don't generally have any other debt. They got into debt with their student loans and they never recovered. So it became a thing where they had to basically move through life without any credit. Okay. And the borrowers, they came out of school and they generally got hit right out of the gate. So they never even had a chance to establish credit.
So Lane, I got a question. So you renegotiate the loan, you get the loan way down. Question is can the borrower, the student, the original student, can the borrower renegotiate, or did they just not even have that thought? I mean, if they picked up the phone and said, I'd like to renegotiate my loan, is that possible, or did they just not know how to do it?
No, they could pick up the phone and do it. The problem is they don't have the money. Okay, and here's the other side is the borrower, okay, they're in distress. And if they had the money, they wouldn't be in distress. That's number one. The second part of that is, let's pretend they came into a big pile of cash, right? They won the lottery, someone passed away and they took a life insurance benefit, whatever it is, right? They call the lender and they say, hey, I want to pay this loan off in full. I owed you $100,000. I'll settle it for, let's say they gave them the same scenario. I'll settle it for 35. The existing lender is going to go, we'll take 80. If you can give us 80 right now, we'll take it. They don't negotiate at the borrower level. And that's one of the barriers to entry in this business is you have to know where and how to negotiate those loans. They're not going to do it with every borrower, because if they did do it with the borrowers, especially in today's world where social media, that word can get out quickly, you'd have a strategic default on the portfolio. The investors would completely destroy these lenders, right? If they knew they could negotiate out their existing debt at a discount, everybody would default, and then the banks would fail. The investors in those lending institutions would crush them. So the lenders are not interested.
So when you renegotiate, let's say it's $100,000 down to $35,000, you renegotiate it. At that point, you pay off the $35,000 and it's over. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's our investor commitment, is at 35.
Got it.
So going back to that whole story about FICO, right? We're sharing the discount that we obtained with our borrower through that low fixed interest rate and custom term. Okay, because remember, I gave you those FICO numbers. There isn't a lender on this planet that's going to give someone with a 500 FICO score a 3.9 fixed, even with a co-borrower. It just doesn't happen, right? We're doing it every day. And what's interesting is our success rate is over 98%. So these borrowers are getting it. They're working. They're doing it. They want to get out of debt. They are looking for a solution, hence the capitalism and the entrepreneurial approach of let's fix this problem, right? We have a way to fix it. We know how to do it. So I share all of that because our borrowers they're succeeding. It's fun to watch them win. And you know, the way we do it, we're showing them as current on their credit report, and we all of a sudden start seeing significant FICO recoveries. Okay, now I know that a lot of folks, especially the higher net worth, they're like, don't worry about your FICO score. However, as you're attempting to get life kind of figured out, a FICO score that is good is a benefit, right? Your ability to buy real estate, to even get started in life and rent. They're going to pull credit. They're going to look at, are you a good tenant? Your ability to get a car and a credit card and live a responsible life is all based on, do you have a FICO score that is sustainable? Well, what we discovered, and this is an unintended benefit, what we discovered was within 6 to 9 months of us funding a loan for a borrower, the average borrower FICO score pops up 125 points. Co-borrower 138. So those are meaningful FICO recoveries. Their life starts to shift, which is another contributing factor as to why they want to stay in the boat and get these debts paid off.
So Lane, we're running low on time, but what Lane is talking about here, if you look behind me, you had a little rat race there, and that's where most people get stuck in and never get out of. And Lane was saying, if you get out of it, you go to Reg D, 506 Reg D, that's a fast track investment. So the object of the Rich Dad company is promote people to be aware or get out of the rat race, and you might get into the 506 Reg D or the fast track type investments. So here I am. I have $100,000, and you can offer me 10.25% interest.
Right.
How much?
I'll show this to you real quick, and it's a little hard to see, so I'll send it to you, and you can share it. This is and you can see it at investyrefy.com. And what you've got is you as the investor pick the duration of your investment from 1 to 5 years. And the interest rates that we offer are fixed interest rates to you as the investor in a secured collateralized portfolio. And these interest rates start out at 6.25% for a 1 year, 6.75 for a 2, 7.5 for a 3, 8.25 for a 4, and then 10.25 for a 5-year investment. And what we do is we calculate interest on a daily basis, and then we pay interest income monthly if you need the income. As the investor, you can say, I don't want the income. Let it reinvest or compound. You can do that. You can actually change that as often as monthly. So you've got complete and total control over your investment. We offer a liquidity feature, and we also offer what's called a roll-up, meaning you can start in the 1, 2, 3, or 4-year term. Just test it out if you want to, and then roll up to a longer term at the end of your elected term. You've got lots of options at the point.
So my question would be, how is it securitized? How do you assure the 10.25?
Long story, we've got a security agreement that basically says if YRefi defaults on any payment to any investor, interest or principal, the entire portfolio is handed off to a collateral agent. That collateral agent has one job: make the investors whole. How are they going to do it? They're going to sell the portfolio, they're going to collect on the portfolio, or they're going to sell a portion and collect on the balance. Okay, now remember, the whole portfolio is a bankruptcy protected pool of refinanced student loans, right? So I'll use an example. We have a $100 million portfolio. We used investor capital, $35 million. It's refinanced into a $100 million asset. They would take that $100 million asset. Let's say they sold it for 85 cents, $85 million. We then pay back the investors their 35. It's leveraged like that. That's how the leverage works.
You still got to check it out, so we're still checking it out.
Absolutely.
So Lane, thank you very much. Again, it's a great example of how an entrepreneur can solve a problem.
I'm going to elaborate really fast on one thing, because you just hit the nail on the head. The problem has gotten massive. It is when we started the company, it's a $21 billion distressed private student loan market. With inflation and student loans being variable interest rate, that market in the last 14 months has exploded to over $45 billion. Thank you, President Biden.
Well, I know a lot of people think capitalism is a bad word, but capitalism is what makes this country great and what produces and what solves the problems. So I'm all for capitalism. I'm all for entrepreneurship. I'm all for free trade and free markets. And the more entrepreneurs we get out there, I think the world will be a better place.
Indeed.
So Lane, thank you very much again. How did they get in touch with YRefi?
2 ways. You can go to investyrefy.com. Just invest, the letter Y, REFY, just like it's on my shirt.com. Or you can call 888-YRefi24. That's 888-973-3924. Give us a holler, and we're all here to answer questions. We don't do any kind of pressure or selling, none of that. We're here to explain our story and answer questions. If you love it, wonderful. If you don't, that's okay. We've made a new friend. And yes, you can invest through individual account, joint trust, IRAs, LLCs, however you want to invest, we can hold the asset.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lane.
Pleasure's mine.
So we thank all of you for watching the Rich Dad Radio Show. Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Good news and bad news about money. And I want to thank Lane Schoenberger. His company is YREFI, YREFY. And again, it's an example of entrepreneurs who do very good by solving problems our government causes, specifically Obama and Biden. Oh my God, can't believe those guys. But anyway, they've taken the student loan debt, which is now $1.8 trillion. It is the number one asset of the U.S. government, and those school teachers, those college professors, all they do is keep raising their rates, and the students have still no assurances that after they graduate, will they get that high-paying job. I mean, what a con job higher education has become. And some of you may realize this, but I did a talk at Arizona State University, and 39 professors came after us. These professors, are these people here? They don't know it. And our school system has gone communist. It's just horrifying what's happened. So thank God there's guys like Lane Schoenberger and YREFI. Any comments there, Kim?
Yeah, well, this was a great example of an entrepreneur solving a problem that the government caused. And I still remember I had some friends wanted to introduce me to a business owner that was connected to a property that you and I had, Robert. And they're like, oh, you should meet this guy because he's really good in business. And I'm sure you guys would have connections and you're going to be, basically neighbors. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll meet these people. What do they do? Well, it turns out they were one of the top lenders of private student loan debt. And I'm like, I think I'm going to pass. But these were the people that are doing what Lane and YREFI, the problem that these people created, and YREFI is trying to be the solution to that problem. So it's been going on a long time. A lot of people have made a lot of money. Unfortunately, it is at the effect of a lot of people who are struggling financially today. So again, That's why we have the Rich Dad Radio Show, to keep looking at new solutions, new alternatives to financial situations.
Yep. And entrepreneurs can do a lot of good that these college professors cannot do. Yeah. Anyway, I went to YREFI office. I suggest you do the same thing if you're going to invest. Either way, if you want to get your loans paid off or you want to invest. And what they have on their wall are pictures of the students they've saved. Mm-hmm. And it's for them, that's their whole thing, is how many students do they pull out of trouble. And that's their whole motivation. And
Robert, it's interesting that the government, and especially it's a little nerve-wracking these days, the government is so overreaching and they keep infringing on more and more private businesses, more and more private situations. And everything they touch is a disaster. It's just a disaster. I mean, if they started going into the housing market, some of the properties they have, they're ugly and they don't work and they don't make financial sense. It's like everything they seem to touch and reach into has major disaster problems. So I would love to see more entrepreneurs and less government. Yeah. Just my
And if something's going to cost $1 to fix, it costs $1 million to fix by the government.
That's right.
So that's the worst thing possible. Anyway, again, thanks to Lane Schoenberger, Chief Investment Officer of YREFI. Thanks, Kim. Thanks all of you for watching the Rich Dad Radio Show. Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.